Being here with you is all I need.
I feel the same way. It's so peaceful.
I love you.
Please take it.
No, I can't.
It's yours.
I don't want it.
Think about it.
What is this money?
It's for expenses. Don't worry.
This is too much.
It's handled. Trust me. This view is beautiful, but not as beautiful as you.
I feel so lucky to be here with you.
I love you.
Oh my gosh, is that her?
Yeah. I wanted you to see this.
She looks so happy.
She was. We should go. You have to leave now. They're coming.
Who's coming? What did you do?
No time. Just go. Don't get out of the city. There you are, my dear.
Thank you, darling.
For 10 peaceful years, the marriage between Ada Nui and her husband Emeka had been the kind of union people in their neighborhood quietly admired. Their house stood on a calm street in Enugu, Nigeria, where evenings were filled with laughter from children and the scent of home-cooked meals drifting across fences. Neighbors often used their marriage as an example whenever young couples argued or complained about the difficulties of married life. Look at Ada and Emeka, elders would say. That is how a husband and wife should live. In 10 years, nobody had ever heard shouting from their home, never seen a slammed door, never witnessed a cold silence between them. Their love seemed steady, like a quiet river that never dried. Ada was 35, elegant, intelligent, and respected in her profession. She worked as the deputy principal of Queen's Secondary School, a prestigious government institution where she had taught English literature for more than 15 years. Her dedication to education had built a reputation that followed her wherever she went. Teachers respected her discipline, students admired her confidence, and the government salary she earned placed her comfortably among the higher-paid educators in the region. Emeka, 5 years older than his wife, was a hard-working businessman who owned Greenleaf Stores, the busiest provision shop in their estate. If someone needed rice, cooking oil, bread, sugar, or even a single seasoning cube, Greenleaf was the place they visited. The store had grown steadily over the years, bringing Emeka a stable income that supported his family well. Together, Ada and Emeka had built a life many people only dreamed about. They had 2 beautiful children, a boy and a girl, both healthy and full of energy. They owned their comfortable house, drove reliable cars, and never worried about paying school fees or medical bills. Their wealth was not loud or flashy, but it was always enough when needed. Yet sometimes, even a peaceful life hides silent dreams. Long before she married Emeka, Ada had carried a secret ambition deep in her heart. During her university years, she dreamed about studying abroad, earning an international degree, and becoming an educational leader respected beyond Nigeria. It was a dream she rarely shared with anyone because she feared people would laugh at it or say it was impossible. After marriage, the dream did not disappear, it simply became quiet, buried beneath daily responsibilities of motherhood, teaching, and supporting her husband's business. But deep inside her heart, the desire remained alive. 4 months before everything changed, Ada did something she had never done during her entire marriage. She kept a secret from her husband. One night, after the children had gone to bed and Emeka was asleep, she sat quietly with her laptop and discovered a fully funded postgraduate scholarship from the University of Edinburgh in the United Kingdom. The program was a master's degree in educational leadership, worth more than £38,000, covering tuition and most living expenses. Her heart pounded as she read the requirements again and again. Without telling anyone, she completed the application forms. She wrote her essays carefully, uploaded documents, and pressed submit while the house slept in silence. She told herself a simple excuse: if she failed, no one would ever know she tried. Weeks passed, and life continued normally. Then one Tuesday afternoon, while sitting in her office at school marking examination papers, her phone vibrated with a new email notification. She opened it casually, expecting another routine message. Instead, the words on the screen made her heart freeze. Dear Mrs. Ada Nui, we are pleased to inform you that your scholarship application has been successful. For several seconds she simply stared at the phone, unable to breathe. Her dream had come true. Driving home that evening through the busy Enugu traffic, Ada's mind raced with excitement and fear at the same time. She kept telling herself that Emeka would be proud of her, that he had always supported her ambitions. Yet a small voice inside whispered a troubling question: how would he feel knowing she had hidden this for 4 months? When she arrived home, Emeka was relaxing on the sofa after leaving his shop early. His face lit up happily when he saw her. But Ada's nervous expression immediately caught his attention. Something important was clearly on her mind. She sat beside him, holding his hands tightly, and confessed everything: the application, the scholarship, the opportunity to study in the United Kingdom. For a long moment Emeka said nothing. Then suddenly he laughed warmly, his eyes shining with pride. Instead of anger, he embraced her with excitement. He promised to pay for her visa and flight ticket and told her to go chase her dream without fear. That night they made promises to each other: she would remain faithful while abroad, and he would wait patiently for her return. Neither of them realized that those promises would soon face a test neither could imagine. The weeks that followed Ada's scholarship news passed like a storm of excitement and preparation. The visa application was approved faster than she expected, documents were signed, luggage was packed and unpacked repeatedly, and relatives visited their home in Enugu to congratulate her. Her mother-in-law came from the village to pray over her journey, placing her hands gently on Ada's head and asking God to protect her in a foreign land. Neighbors stopped by with gifts and advice about life abroad, even though most of them had never traveled outside Nigeria themselves. Ada's children did not fully understand what was happening, but they sensed that something big was changing. They clung to her constantly during those final days, asking innocent questions about airplanes and London weather. Emeka remained calm and supportive through everything. Every evening he helped her check documents and reminded her not to forget important things. Deep inside, he would miss her terribly, but he refused to show fear. On the morning of her departure, they traveled to Murtala Muhammad International Airport in Lagos. The terminal was crowded with travelers and families saying emotional goodbyes. Ada hugged her children tightly until they laughed and begged her to release them. She kissed their foreheads again and again as if trying to store their warmth in her memory. Then she turned to Emeka. For a moment neither of them spoke. The noise of the airport seemed to fade around them. He pulled her into a long embrace and whispered softly, "Make us proud." Ada nodded against his chest, holding him tightly before finally walking toward the departure gate. She did not look back because she knew if she did, her courage might disappear. When the plane finally lifted into the sky, Ada leaned back in her seat and closed her eyes. She had done it. Her dream was beginning. The first 40 minutes of the flight passed quietly. The cabin lights were soft, passengers settled into their seats, and the steady hum of the engines created a peaceful rhythm. Ada sat in economy class near the middle of the aircraft, looking out the window at endless clouds stretching across the horizon. She felt proud of herself, proud of Emeka for supporting her, proud of the future waiting in Edinburgh. Then a flight attendant appeared beside her seat with a polite smile. "Good afternoon, ma'am," the woman said gently. "I'm sorry to disturb you, but a passenger in business class asked if you could join him for a few minutes." Ada frowned slightly, confused. "A passenger?" she asked. "Yes," the attendant replied. "He insisted that he would like to speak with you. He said it's something important." Every sensible thought told Ada to refuse. She did not know this person. Accepting invitations from strangers on a plane was not normal behavior. Yet curiosity stirred quietly inside her mind. After a moment she unbuckled her seatbelt and followed the attendant through the curtain separating economy from business class. The difference between the two sections shocked her immediately. The space felt wider, quieter, and more luxurious than anything she had experienced before. Large seats that turned into beds, warm golden lighting, and the faint scent of expensive perfume filled the air. It almost felt like entering another world inside the same airplane. A man sitting near the window looked up as she approached. He was perhaps in his late 40s, broad-shouldered with a confident posture and a calm expression. His clothing was simple but clearly expensive, the kind worn by people who did not need to prove their wealth. His eyes studied her carefully before he smiled. "Ah, there you are," he said smoothly, gesturing toward the empty seat beside him. "Please, sit." Ada remained standing for a moment. "I only came for a minute," she replied cautiously. "Of course," the man said. "My name is Richard Hargreaves." I noticed you at the airport earlier today, and something about you caught my attention. Ada felt uncomfortable hearing that. I'm married, she said immediately, hoping it would end the conversation. But Richard simply smiled as if the statement amused him. I'm sure you are, he replied calmly. A woman like you would not remain unmarried for long. The conversation continued slowly. Richard spoke about his life in England, mentioning properties in Manchester, hotels in Europe, and a large house in London. He did not brag loudly, instead, he spoke about these things casually as if discussing the weather. That calm confidence made everything feel more real. Then, without warning, he reached beside him and placed a thick envelope on the armrest between them. Ada looked at it, confused. What is this? She asked quietly. Richard leaned back in his seat, studying her expression carefully. £50,000, he said softly. Just for keeping me company on this flight. The words seemed unreal. £50,000 was more money than Ada had ever seen at one time in her life. Her husband had given her responsible money for her journey, visa fees, travel expenses, spending funds, but this was something entirely different. It sat between them like a silent temptation. Ada's mind raced with thoughts. She told herself that she could accept the money and simply walk away when the plane landed. Emeka would never know. Nobody would ever know. After all, Richard had not asked for anything yet. Slowly, almost without realizing what she was doing, Ada reached forward and picked up the envelope. The moment her fingers closed around it, something invisible shifted inside her heart. The quiet promise she had made to her husband only hours earlier began to feel distant and fragile. 2 hours later, as the cabin lights dimmed and passengers around them slept peacefully, Richard leaned closer and spoke in a calm voice that carried quiet authority. Ada, he whispered gently, you already know what I want. She tried to protest, but the words came out weak and uncertain. Somewhere high above the dark Atlantic Ocean, surrounded by silence and luxury she had never experienced before, Ada felt the first cracks forming in the promise she had sworn to keep. She told herself it would only happen once, that when the plane landed she would disappear into her new life in Edinburgh and Richard would never find her again. But deep down, she already knew that the choice she was about to make would change everything. High above the dark Atlantic Ocean, the airplane continued its steady journey toward London, its engines humming softly like a distant lullaby. Most of the passengers were asleep now, wrapped in blankets with their seats reclined, unaware that a quiet drama was unfolding just a few rows away in the business-class cabin. Ada sat beside Richard Hargreaves in the wide leather seat, the envelope containing £50,000 resting inside her handbag like a heavy secret. Her heart was beating faster than usual, and although she tried to appear calm, her mind was full of confusion. Only hours earlier she had stood in an airport in Lagos, promising her husband that she would remain faithful no matter what happened abroad. She had sworn it on their children, on the 10 years of trust they had built together. Yet here she was now, sitting beside a stranger whose presence felt powerful and dangerous at the same time. Richard did not rush her. He had the patience of a man who understood that temptation works best when it moves slowly. He spoke to her in a low, relaxed voice, asking about her studies, her life in Nigeria, and the dream that had brought her to the United Kingdom. Ada answered carefully at first, but the atmosphere around them made it strangely easy to talk. The dim golden lighting, the quiet luxury of the cabin, and Richard's confident calmness created a world that felt completely separate from the life she had left behind. When he finally leaned closer and whispered her name again, she already knew what was coming. Ada, he said softly, you deserve more than the life you left behind. The words sank into her mind in a way she did not expect. She thought about the comfortable but ordinary life she shared with Emeka in Enugu, the daily routine of schoolwork, family duties, and neighborhood conversations. Then she looked around at the business-class cabin, at the expensive watch on Richard's wrist, at the quiet wealth that surrounded him. The contrast was overwhelming. In that moment she made the decision she would later regret for the rest of her life. What happened afterward was quick and silent, hidden behind curtains while the rest of the passengers slept peacefully around them. When it was over, Richard simply reached into his briefcase and placed another envelope beside her without a word. Ada stared at it in disbelief. Another £50,000, he said casually, as if the amount meant nothing to him. £100,000 in a single night. Ada leaned back in the seat, staring out of the small airplane window at the endless darkness outside. A tear slid slowly down her cheek, but she did not wipe it away. Her thoughts were spinning wildly. She remembered the moment in her living room when Emeka had held her face gently and asked her to promise she would remain faithful. She remembered the sincerity in his voice when he promised he would also wait for her. And now she had broken that promise before even setting foot in the United Kingdom. The realization made her chest ache, yet the envelopes filled with money inside her bag also filled her mind with strange excitement. Richard watched her quietly, studying her reaction with the calm interest of someone observing a predictable outcome. After a while he leaned closer again, his voice still relaxed and confident. "You see," he said, "sometimes life offers opportunities that change everything." Ada closed her eyes for a moment, trying to silence the guilt inside her heart. She told herself the same lie many people tell when they cross a moral line for the first time. Just this once. When we land in London, I will walk away. My husband will never know. My children will never know. My life will continue normally. Yet even as she repeated those thoughts in her mind, something else had already begun to change. The excitement of wealth and luxury was slowly overpowering the voice of conscience she had always trusted. The rest of the flight passed in a strange blur of emotions. Richard spoke occasionally about London, about the houses he owned and the businesses he managed across Europe. His life sounded like something from a movie: private drivers, luxury apartments, expensive vacations in different countries. Ada listened with fascination, imagining what it would feel like to live in such a world. By the time the pilot's voice finally announced their descent into Heathrow Airport, Ada felt like she was no longer the same woman who had boarded the plane in Lagos. When the aircraft landed and passengers began leaving the cabin, she remained seated beside Richard for a moment longer, collecting her thoughts. Outside the airport terminal, 3 sleek black luxury cars were waiting with drivers standing beside them. Ada stopped walking when she saw them. She had never seen such effortless wealth displayed so casually before. One of the drivers immediately stepped forward to take Richard's bag, greeting him respectfully. As Ada slid into the soft leather seat beside him, watching the lights of London glow outside the window, she felt a strange thrill rising inside her chest. Her new life was beginning in a way she had never imagined. Somewhere deep in her mind, a faint memory of Emeka's face appeared briefly, standing in the Lagos airport waving goodbye, but Ada quickly pushed the thought away. For now, she told herself, the past could wait. What mattered was the future unfolding in front of her, a future filled with wealth, excitement, and a man who seemed capable of giving her everything she had never even dared to dream about. And without realizing it, she had just taken the first step toward losing the life she once believed was perfect. When Ada stepped out of the luxury car that evening, the cool London air touched her face like a reminder that she was far away from everything she had ever known. The journey from Heathrow Airport had felt unreal. Through the tinted windows of the car she had watched the city unfold, long bridges stretching across dark rivers, tall glass buildings glowing with lights, and streets filled with people who walked quickly as if every second mattered. It was nothing like Enugu. Everything felt bigger, faster, colder. Yet what waited at the end of that journey shocked her even more. The car stopped in front of a massive white stone mansion hidden behind tall iron gates. The building rose 5 stories high, its tall windows shining under soft outdoor lights. Ada stared in silence as the gates opened slowly and the car rolled into the private driveway. She had seen wealthy houses before, but this was something entirely different. This looked like a place belonging to people who existed in a world above ordinary life. Richard stepped out of the car casually, as if this kind of luxury was the most normal thing in the world. Staff members moved quietly near the entrance, greeting him respectfully and taking their luggage without being asked. Ada followed him inside, her eyes moving slowly across the interior. Marble floors reflected the light of enormous chandeliers. A wide staircase curved upward toward the upper floors like something from a palace. Everything around her whispered wealth, not the loud kind that shows off, but the quiet, powerful kind that speaks without trying. Richard turned toward her with a small smile when he saw the amazement on her face. "Welcome to London," he said simply. That night Ada slept in a room larger than her entire living room back in Nigeria. The bed was soft and wide, the curtains thick and elegant, and the view outside the tall window showed the glowing lights of the city stretching endlessly into the distance. She should have felt guilty. Somewhere inside she knew that she had crossed a line she could never completely erase. But Richard's attention and the comforts surrounding her made it easy to silence those thoughts. Over the next days he showed her a life she had never imagined before. Expensive restaurants where dinner cost more than a month of her salary back home. Luxury cars driven by professional chauffeurs. Designer clothing that staff members brought for her to try as if she were royalty. Slowly, without noticing, Ada began to change. At first she still told herself that this relationship with Richard was temporary, something that would end once she settled into her studies in Edinburgh. But Richard was a man who understood how to make someone feel chosen. He spoke to her with admiration, telling her how intelligent and beautiful she was, how rare it was to find a woman with both education and elegance. For the first time in her life, Ada felt like someone extraordinary rather than simply responsible. 2 weeks passed quickly. Meanwhile, thousands of kilometers away in Enugu, Emeka's life had begun to change in a completely different way. Every morning he woke up expecting to see a message from his wife. Every evening he went to bed hoping she would call to tell him she had arrived safely. The phone always rang when he called her number, but she never answered. At first he tried to remain calm. People told him international travel could be stressful and confusing. Maybe she was busy settling into her accommodation or adjusting to the time difference. But after 14 days of silence, worry began to grow into something darker. His children asked about their mother constantly. "When will mommy call?" they asked during dinner. Emeka forced a smile each time, giving them the same answer. "She is busy studying. She will call soon." But inside his heart, fear was slowly tightening like a knot. Finally he did something desperate. Using the number he found online, he called the University of Edinburgh and explained the situation to the woman who answered. He told her his wife had traveled from Nigeria to begin her master's program but had not contacted her family since leaving. The woman promised to check the records. 3 days later the university called back. The information they gave him froze his blood. Ada had resumed her studies. She had attended lectures the previous week and appeared completely fine. Emeka sat quietly for a long time after the call ended. His wife was alive. She was healthy. She was studying normally. Yet she had chosen not to contact her husband or children for more than 2 weeks. That realization hurt far more than fear ever could. He sat alone in their bedroom that night, staring at the empty side of the bed where Ada used to sleep. Her faint perfume still lingered in the room. "Something is wrong," he whispered to himself in the darkness. "My wife would never do this without a reason." In that moment he made a decision that would change everything. He would go to the United Kingdom himself. Even if it took all his savings, even if he had to search the entire country, he would find his wife and bring her home. 3 months later, after selling 2 of his investment properties to raise enough money, Emeka finally boarded a plane for the first time in his life. As the aircraft lifted into the sky, he closed his eyes and prayed quietly. "Ada is not a bad woman," he whispered to himself. Something must have happened to her. He had no idea that the truth waiting for him in that foreign country would break his heart in ways he had never imagined possible. When Emeka finally stepped out of the airplane at Heathrow Airport, the cold London air struck him immediately. It was unlike anything he had felt in Nigeria. The sky was grey, the wind sharp, and the massive airport around him seemed endless. People rushed past him speaking in accents he struggled to understand. For the first time in his life, Emeka realized how small and unfamiliar the world could feel when you stepped outside your country. But he had not come for comfort or sightseeing. He had come for one reason only, to find his wife. With a small travel bag in his hand and determination burning inside his chest, he walked through the busy arrival hall like a man on a mission. Before leaving Nigeria, he had sold 2 of his small investment properties so he could afford to stay in the United Kingdom for as long as necessary. If it took 6 months, he would stay 6 months. If it took a year, he would stay a year. He had made himself one promise: he would not return home without finding Ada. From Heathrow Airport he boarded a long train heading north toward Edinburgh. The journey lasted more than 4 hours, cutting through the English countryside while unfamiliar towns and quiet green fields passed outside the window. Most passengers on the train were silent, reading books or looking at their phones, but Emeka sat still with his hands clasped together, staring out at the moving landscape. His mind replayed the same memories again and again: Ada laughing in their kitchen, Ada helping their children with homework, Ada promising she would return to him exactly the way she had left. Each memory strengthened his belief that something was wrong. The woman he married could not simply abandon her family. When he finally arrived in Edinburgh late that evening, the city looked calm and beautiful under the pale streetlights. Old stone buildings lined the streets, and the cold wind carried the distant sound of traffic. But Emeka barely noticed any of it. He found a small hotel near the University of Edinburgh and rented the cheapest room available. It was nothing like the comfortable home he owned in Enugu. The room was small, the bed narrow, and the radiator made strange clicking noises in the corner. Yet Emeka did not care. He sat on the edge of the bed and looked at the framed photograph he had brought with him, a picture of Ada smiling brightly during their 8th wedding anniversary. "I will find you," he whispered quietly to the photograph. "No matter how long it takes." The next morning he woke early and walked to the university campus. The large stone buildings and wide lawns made the place feel peaceful and serious at the same time. Students moved around in small groups, talking and laughing as they headed to classes. Emeka stood near the entrance gate holding the photograph of his wife. Whenever a student passed, he politely showed them the picture. "Excuse me," he asked gently. "Have you seen this woman? Her name is Ada. She studies here." Most people shook their heads and continued walking. Some gave him sympathetic looks but could not help. One student said she thought she had seen someone who looked similar in the education department but wasn't completely sure. Emeka remained standing there for hours, patiently asking everyone who passed by. Meanwhile, hundreds of kilometers away in London, Ada was living a completely different life. During the weekdays she stayed in her student accommodation in Edinburgh, attending lectures and impressing her professors with her intelligence and discipline. But every Friday evening she packed a small bag, climbed into the expensive car Richard had bought for her, and drove south to London to spend the weekend in his mansion. It had become her secret routine: serious student from Monday to Friday, luxurious companion from Saturday to Sunday. One Friday afternoon, as she drove along the highway toward London with music playing softly in the car, Ada reflected on how much her life had changed in just a few months. She remembered the responsible woman she had once been in Enugu, the devoted wife, the respected deputy principal, the mother who woke early every morning to prepare breakfast for her children. That version of herself now felt like a distant memory. "Emeka will find another woman," she murmured to herself while keeping her eyes on the road. "Life moves on." The words came out more easily than she expected, though somewhere deep inside her heart a small voice tried to protest. She quickly silenced it. The wealth and freedom she was experiencing now felt too powerful to question. Back at the university entrance in Edinburgh, Emeka was still standing with the photograph in his hands. Hours had passed, but he refused to leave. Suddenly a sleek silver car slowly approached the gate. It was far more expensive than any car normally driven by students. Emeka glanced up casually at first, then his entire body froze. Through the windshield he saw a familiar face behind the steering wheel. Ada. At the exact same moment, Ada looked forward through the glass and saw a man standing near the gate holding a framed photograph. Her heart stopped instantly. The car slowed to a complete stop. Her hands tightened around the steering wheel as fear rushed through her chest. "No, that can't be," she whispered to herself. She leaned forward slightly, trying to see more clearly. The man was still showing the photograph to a passing student, but she recognized the shape of his shoulders, the way he stood, the familiar calm determination in his posture. It was Emeka. Her husband had found her. Ada sat frozen behind the steering wheel, her heart pounding so violently that she could hear it echoing in her ears. The silver car idled quietly at the entrance of the University of Edinburgh, while just a few meters ahead of her stood the one person she had hoped never to see again in this country. Emeka. Her husband. For a moment her mind refused to believe what her eyes were seeing. How could he possibly be here? She had traveled thousands of kilometers away from Nigeria, convinced that the distance would hide the choices she had made. Yet here he was, standing patiently at the university gate with a framed photograph of her in his hands, asking strangers if they had seen his wife. The sight hit her chest like a heavy weight. The man looked thinner than she remembered. His shoulders seemed tired, and his eyes carried the quiet exhaustion of someone who had not slept well for many nights. Ada's fingers tightened around the steering wheel as panic rushed through her body. If he turned around now, he would see her sitting in the expensive car Richard had bought for her. He would see everything she had become since leaving Nigeria. The thought terrified her. Inside her mind, two voices began fighting each other. One voice told her to step out of the car, run to him, apologize, and explain everything. The other voice, the colder one she had been listening to for months, told her to start the engine and drive away before he noticed her. Emeka still had not seen her yet. He was turned slightly to the side, showing the photograph to another passing student and speaking politely as he had done all morning. "Excuse me," he was saying gently. "Please, have you seen this woman? She studies here." The student shook his head and continued walking. Emeka sighed quietly but did not move from his place. Ada watched him through the windshield, and suddenly memories flooded her mind without permission. She remembered the day they first met at university years ago, the way he had helped her carry books across campus when her bag broke. She remembered the small wedding ceremony where they promised to support each other no matter what life brought. She remembered the airport in Lagos, his arms around her, his voice telling her to go make the family proud. The memories hurt more than she expected. For the first time since meeting Richard, Ada felt something close to shame rise inside her chest. Meanwhile, Emeka finally turned slightly, adjusting his grip on the photograph. His eyes lifted toward the road ahead, toward the silver car stopped only a few meters away. For a brief second their eyes met through the windshield. The world seemed to freeze. Ada felt the air leave her lungs as recognition slowly spread across Emeka's face. His expression changed from confusion to disbelief, then to quiet shock. He took a step forward, staring at her as if his mind was struggling to accept what he was seeing. Ada could see every emotion crossing his face, relief that she was alive, confusion about the expensive car, and deep hurt that he could not yet understand. The silence between them felt endless even though only seconds had passed. Finally Emeka walked slowly toward the car. Each step felt heavy, like the weight of months of unanswered questions was pushing him forward. Ada's heart beat faster with every movement he made. She knew she could still drive away if she wanted. The engine was running. The road ahead was clear. One press of the accelerator and she could disappear before he reached her window. But something inside her refused to move. She remained there, frozen, watching the man she had betrayed approach the car. Emeka stopped beside the driver's window and looked at her carefully. Up close, the difference in their lives was impossible to ignore. Ada was dressed in expensive clothes, sitting inside a luxury vehicle that clearly did not belong to a struggling student. For a moment he said nothing. He simply stared at her, searching her face as if trying to find the woman he used to know. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft and calm, but the pain behind it was impossible to hide. "Ada," he said quietly. "So you are here." Those simple words carried months of confusion, worry, and heartbreak. Ada felt tears forming in her eyes, but she forced herself to remain composed. Students passing nearby slowed down, sensing the tension between them. Emeka glanced briefly at the expensive car again before looking back at her face. "I have been calling you for 4 months," he continued gently. "Your children ask about you every day." The mention of the children made Ada's chest tighten painfully. For a second she almost opened the door to step out and embrace him. But then another thought entered her mind, Richard, the mansion in London, the luxurious life she had become used to. That life suddenly felt fragile, as if it could disappear the moment she admitted the truth. Emeka noticed the hesitation in her eyes. He lowered his gaze slightly, then spoke again in the same calm voice. Ada, what happened to you? The question hung in the cold Edinburgh air, heavier than anything either of them had said before. Ada opened her mouth to answer, but no words came out. For the first time since stepping onto the airplane months ago, she realized that the choices she had made could no longer remain hidden. The life she had built in secret was now standing face to face with the life she had abandoned. For several long seconds neither Ada nor Emeka moved. The cold Edinburgh wind passed quietly between them while students continued walking across the campus, some glancing curiously at the strange scene unfolding beside the silver car. Ada sat behind the steering wheel with her hands trembling slightly, unable to meet her husband's eyes for more than a moment at a time. Emeka, on the other hand, stood calmly beside the window, studying her face as if searching for answers hidden somewhere behind her silence. Months of worry had brought him across an ocean to this exact moment, yet now that he had finally found her, he seemed strangely peaceful. The anger Ada expected to see was not there. Instead there was only sadness and a quiet exhaustion that made her chest ache. Finally Emeka spoke again, his voice low but steady. Ada. I sold 2 properties to come here, he said softly. I did not come to fight with you. I only came to understand. His words felt like a knife twisting slowly inside her heart. She knew the kind of man he was, hardworking, patient, loyal to the people he loved. Hearing what he had sacrificed just to find her made the guilt she had been ignoring suddenly feel heavier than ever. She lowered her eyes, staring at the expensive steering wheel in front of her. Emeka, things changed, she said quietly. The words sounded weak even to her own ears. Emeka nodded slowly, as if he had expected that answer. His eyes moved briefly over the car again before returning to her face. I can see that, he replied. The calm tone of his voice somehow hurt more than anger would have. For a moment neither of them spoke again. The silence stretched long enough that Ada felt pressure building inside her chest. She knew she had to say something, to explain how everything had gone so wrong after that flight to London. But how could she explain the temptation, the money, the excitement of a new life that had slowly erased the promises she once believed were unbreakable? Finally she forced herself to look at him again. I met someone, she admitted. The words felt heavy as they left her mouth. Emeka's face did not change immediately. He simply listened. Ada continued slowly, choosing her words carefully. She told him about Richard, about the man she met on the airplane, about the luxury life he had shown her in London, about the weekends she spent there while pretending to live as a normal student in Edinburgh. With every sentence she spoke, the distance between them seemed to grow larger. When she finally finished, Emeka closed his eyes for a moment as if absorbing the truth. The cold wind moved gently across the campus, rustling the trees nearby. When he opened his eyes again, there was a quiet understanding in them that frightened Ada even more than anger would have. So this is the life you chose, he said calmly. Ada felt tears gathering again, but she forced herself to remain strong. I didn't plan it this way, she whispered. But things are different now. Emeka nodded slowly. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out the framed photograph he had been carrying all morning. It was the same picture from their anniversary, the one where she was laughing brightly beside him. He looked at the photograph for a few seconds before holding it up toward her. This is the woman I came to find, he said quietly. But the woman sitting in this car. I don't recognize her anymore. The words struck Ada harder than anything else he had said. For the first time she felt the full weight of what she had lost. Emeka lowered the photograph and stepped back from the car slightly. I will not beg you to come home, he continued. Love should not need begging. Ada felt something inside her chest tighten painfully. The children miss you, he added softly. But if this new life is what makes you happy, then I will not stand in your way. The dignity in his voice made her tears finally spill over. She had expected shouting, accusations, maybe even anger. Instead he was giving her freedom to choose. And that freedom suddenly felt heavier than any punishment. Emeka turned slowly, preparing to walk away. But before he took more than a few steps, Ada's voice stopped him. Emeka, wait. Her words came out almost like a whisper. He paused but did not turn around immediately. Ada opened the car door slowly and stepped outside. The cold air hit her face, but she barely noticed. Standing there in front of him, she felt like two different versions of herself were fighting for control, the woman who had chased wealth and excitement, and the woman who once believed family was everything. For a long moment she said nothing. The choice in front of her was painfully clear. Behind her stood the luxurious life Richard had offered. In front of her stood the man who had loved her faithfully for 10 years. The silence stretched between them as the wind moved softly through the trees of the university campus. And in that quiet moment, Ada realized that the most important decision of her life could no longer be avoided.